All this started with a guy named Edward Bernays.
Edward Bernays.
Edward Bernays. He was the guy that invented the term PR. And he changed the term from propaganda to public relations. He just changed the word propaganda. He's the reason our butter or margarine got dyed yellow. He's the reason that we think bacon is part of an American breakfast because the pork industry needed to sell more bacon. He's the reason the Department of War was changed to the Department of Defense. He's the reason that women started smoking Virginia Slims back in the 70s. When it was inappropriate for women to smoke. So he organized a parade called Torches of Freedom, where women would go and smoke in the street and just say F you to everybody. And he changed the perception as like, this is a symbol of freedom and I'm going to smoke. So he was the biggest propagandist probably in the last 400 or 500 years, like in the world. So he manipulated a lot of economic stuff. He had a lot to do with the United Fruit Company, which is down in South America, which you may have heard of in Panama. But this guy invented all of these processes to shape perception and change how people behave. And he was actually Sigmund Freud's nephew.
Let's talk about one of the most dangerous men in American history. Meet Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who used his uncle's theories that people are more driven by their unconscious desires and fears than by rational thought. He used this to overthrow the government of Guatemala and taught the CIA psychological warfare. During World War I, he worked for President Woodrow Wilson on the Committee of Public Information, where he used emotional manipulation to steer the public's opinion about the war. Bernays said that if you could use propaganda for war, then you can use it for peace. But what he really meant was profit. He rebranded propaganda to be used for corporations and called it PR, public relations. We can thank him for the fluoride in water. In the mid-20th century, the aluminum industry was facing a problem. Fluoride, which was a toxic byproduct, was accumulating. Getting rid of this industrial waste was expensive and difficult with new environmental regulations. So the Aluminum Company of America hired Edward Bernays, and he was able to spin this from a hazardous waste into a benefit to the American public. He enlisted the support of the American Dental Association to endorse fluoride. He staged public events, hired select white coat experts, and anybody who spoke out against it was framed as deranged and delusional by his propaganda machine. Another one of his clients was United Fruit, which is now known as Chiquita. The United Fruit Company was an American corporation using a lot of land in Guatemala to grow bananas. When their democratically elected president decided to redistribute some of the land back to Guatemalan farmers. So they hired Edward Bernays, orchestrated a massive campaign to make their president look like a communist threat and a Soviet puppet. One of the tactics he used was by sending journalists to Guatemala and then controlling what happened to them while there. This led to President Eisenhower authorizing the CIA executed a coup which forced the president to resign. This led to a military dictatorship taking over, which led to land reforms and United Fruit getting their land back. This plunged Guatemala into decades of violence, civil war, and hundreds of thousands of lives lost. If you've ever wondered why Sigmund Freud's work is so renowned, it was also the work of his nephew who used public relations to frame Freud as the father-grandfather of psychology. He did this by getting it in libraries, getting journalists to write about it, and getting celebrities to praise it. Other highlights of Bernays' work is the American breakfast. And the beech nut packing industry hired him to increase their sales. And once again, he used medical experts as the way to push this information. Now let's specifically talk about Bernays' impact on women. I talk about this in my book, Ken Not Included, where we break down one of his first publicity stunts. He was hired by the American tobacco industry to expand profits. Now, at this time, women typically did not smoke cigarettes. The same year that women got the right to vote, he capitalized on women's liberation, orchestrating an event at the Easter Day parade that a group of women would smoke cigarettes, set up as a photo op, and then put in the newspapers all around the country and called it Torches of Freedom. In Edward Bernays' book, Propaganda, he emphasizes the importance of co-opting political and social movements as a means to drive more profits. This was over 100 years ago. And today, with the use of algorithms and personal data, it's even more nefarious. If you want the full breakdown on how women were manufactured similar to a Barbie doll, check out my book, Ken Not Included. We go down the rabbit hole of the evolution of the modern woman and the nefarious tactics that got us here.
Do you ever wonder if we've all been duped about breakfast being the most crucial meal of the day?
Yes!
Well, surprise, surprise, it might just be a massive marketing con. The whole idea that breakfast is essential was concocted by none other than Dr. John Kellogg. That's right, the same Kellogg from Kellogg's cereal.
You gotta eat some kind of breakfast every day!
I managed to drill this idea into our collective psyche just to sell more cereal. Kellogg's rake in billions peddling their cereal products to the masses. But the story takes a stranger twist. In the 1920s, the meat industry craved a larger share of the market. That's when they enlisted the services of Edward Bernays, a man often credited with pioneering the craft of propaganda. So what made Bernays such a big deal? Well, for starters, he's responsible for the propaganda leading to the banana wars, and all those ads you see of doctors endorsing cigarettes in the 50s, that's him too. But how was he so good at this? Well, he gained a lot of experience and insight during his time spent with his uncle, Sigmund Freud. Bernays managed to convince all of America that bacon and eggs was the ideal breakfast. He did all this while working for the bacon packing companies to promote their sales by selling it as a hearty and patriotic food in the morning. And with his psychological prowess, he didn't just stop at meat promotion. Nope, he spotted a golden opportunity right there on the breakfast table. He went all out convincing folks and even doctors that breakfast was the holy grail of diets. And how did he do it? With studies and experiments that turned out to be nothing more than well-funded propaganda. So in Bernays' hands, breakfast became the sensation of the century.
Nice.
I recognized that ideas could be as important weapons as anything. And first, I called what we did publicity direction. I would direct the conduct of people so that they could win through ideas their public goals. And soon I found out that I could give advice and a person could win his or her goals, whether it was to become an elected official or whether to become the head of a corporation or whether to sell ideas or a product. And I found out that one action that they might commit would destroy whatever reputation had been built up through public visibility.
So you taught the first course in public relations and wrote the first
book.
textbook in public relations. Is that concept, engineering of public consent, that's your concept, and that's based on the Thomas Jefferson principle?
That in a democratic society like our own, the consent of the public is basic to anyone's meeting his or her social goals.
Do you also believe that the consent of the public is basic for corporate goals too?
Well, obviously, ideas were weapons and were even more effective than bullets.
Shalom, shalom, giving all honor to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, teach 100% truth. Shalom to the 144,000 and to the elect. Just your brother Ra'aya. And I'm going to get you this scripture. This is 2 Corinthians 2:11. Lest Satan shall get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. We're not ignorant to anything that these devils are doing. You know, so this is 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. And all these things, this is why we should have a watchful eye on these things. We should be circumspect, you know, and watching what's going on, because these devils have people in place to put us in positions where they can compromise our well-being. So with that, I'm going to give all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Shalom, y'all, on to the next one.